I have some questions and some amendments, and before I get started, I will just answer the question you raised before about whether it's appropriate for us to be up here making changes to an ordinance on the dais, and I would just simply say all of us, I believe, voted for a resolution last spring that allowed the stakeholders to come together and in a thoughtful, careful, deliberative way with our staff and with other outside experts to craft a pilot program. My colleague on council has decided to step ahead of that process, and so yeah, that's what we're left with. We're trying to very quickly integrate as many of those recommendations from our staff, from our city legal, from the stakeholders as possible. So in the spirit of that, I would like to talk about, well, the first item is one that we actually had an opportunity to revisit in executive session, and it is something we talked about last time, and I believe it is one of the items that my colleagues indicated they would be willing to consider again on second reading, and that relates to insurance. And so this is on page 4 of 8 on the draft that we received here today on the dais. You remember last time I made an amendment that added the word primary in B1 on page 4. This is part 3, subsection B. And this would, and that was in B1. We did not get agreement on inserting primary commercial into the second part of that. And I'd like to revisit that issue, and I'd like to ask our staff, perhaps our risk management staff who made the recommendation about it being, or city legal, whoever. I see some concerned looks from staff. I'm happy for whatever staff member who feels best able to answer this question to come up, but I wonder if you could talk us through why the recommendation from both the task force and from our own risk management staff was that there be primary commercial inserted before insurance on this part 2, where the application is turned on, but there's not yet a passenger in the car.
Where are we at?
This is Angela Rodriguez again. I just wanted to clarify the proposal that risk management, pardon me, put forward was that it be commercial, that it just exclusively be commercial insurance, and then the discussion that we had was if the word primary would be necessary, and so necessarily primary. So I just wanted to give Ms. Milbo some context. She wasn't in executive session. Do you understand?
I think I'm understanding, but
It's not here.
it's not. Oh, it's not in here.
It would be.
Well,
it would be commercial
I'll
exclusively, not because it doesn't specify commercial in here.
to achieve what I'm going to suggest we try to achieve, we would insert primary commercial before the language that says insurance coverage, and then in the last sentence, and I have some motion sheets if it's easier for my colleagues to read this.
So you're on
The last line would say the
You're on-
required insurance coverage must be provided by the TNC. As I understand the discussion we had, and I'm going to try not to stray into legal territory here, but that there could be a problem for a driver who has a personal policy, and their personal policy is expected to try to handle the claim first when they're engaging in a commercial activity, that they could in fact be jeopardizing their personal insurance policy.
There certainly are situations where there could be coverage gaps. It's of concern.
Would the insertion of, would an amendment addressing that alleviate that concern?
Well, my original recommendation to the stakeholders was that drivers who drive in businesses just need to have a commercial insurance policy. And that commercial insurance policy should cover them wherever they go, and it would be their own insurance policy, not TNC's insurance policy. This, though, is kind of a hybrid, which brings in the surplus lines concept, because I'm assuming the reason for that is the fact that there are many part-time drivers, and commercial insurance policies would cost more money.
Right.
And so this would allow the part-time driver some flexibility. We could try to insert language in here that would make it primary. I'm assuming, so the concern is the required injury may be primary.
You know, and I've got an amendment on that. Why don't I try to get, I think we have an extra copy. And again, to my colleagues, I would say that I'm distributing, in essence, largely the same amendment that we discussed last time. We had an opportunity to discuss this a little further in executive session, and I would just submit to you, I think we are exposing the drivers to some level of risk if we don't require that primary, that the TNC provide primary commercial coverage at the time that they have their application on, for the reasons we discussed earlier. So that's my friendly amendment.
Well, I would certainly like to see the word must instead of may. And I was thinking we were going towards the Houston concept where if the app was on, the commercial insurance was in force.
And I believe that's what my amendment does.
Councilor Riley.
So to be clear, the amendment we've received says that between the time, beginning when a TNC driver has logged on to the TNC's digital network and indicated they're available, from that time until the time the driver accepts a request for transportation through the TNC, during that window of time, primary commercial insurance coverage must be provided of $30,000 per person for bodily injury, $60,000 for personal injury of 2 or more persons, and at least $25,000 for property damage. The required insurance coverage must be provided by the TNC. Right. And the change that represents is inserting the words primary commercial, and then in the last sentence, the current language says that the required insurance coverage may be provided by the TNC driver, or a combination of policies maintained by either. So we're talking about some flexibility with respect to who provides the coverage during that window. We're talking about changing that to it must be primary commercial and it must be provided by the TNC. And I would just like to ask Mr. Scott, who's been helping us with some of these issues, about his reaction to that change.
Sure. Thank you, Councilman Riley. 2 different issues there. The first is in regards to it being expressly commercial insurance. As I stated last time I was here, the personal insurers industry has expressed interest and is actively looking to create TNC-specific insurance products that drivers can purchase to cover this very narrow period 1 time that would sit within a personal policy. Requiring a commercial standard there forecloses that possibility and discourages the industry to continue down the path they're already working on. And as I stated last time, Uber and as Lyft has stated, we are in talks with personal insurers to create these exact type of products. The may, if you will, in the last sentence is the ability then for the TNC driver to procure that type of coverage. If I can respond also to the surplus lines issue, is they often are the portion of the insurance market that covers new and innovative companies. They have more robust underwriting expertise and are able to create rating methodologies and products for these new industries first. And your admitted market often catches up over time, which is the natural progression that we're seeing here now with personal insurers speaking to us.
So it's your sense that this is a time of some change for the insurance industry, that there is some discussion going on with regard to innovations that could address these situations, and that the language that's currently in there that allows for some flexibility as to which coverage would apply, that would encourage, that would support some continued discussions and innovation.
That's correct.
Right. And in fact, and if we say no, it's got to be primary commercial and it must be provided by the TNC, period, what effect would that have?
Well, it would foreclose the ability for the personal insurer to issue that product because there would be no marketplace for it in Austin. If you required it to be commercial and required it to be held by the TNC, the personal insurer wouldn't be able to sell that.
So looking at this from the standpoint of the driver,
yes,
does the driver have anything to gain? Why wouldn't it be in the driver's interest just for the TNC to cover all those costs? Does the driver have anything to gain from allowing the type of flexibility that you'd like to see?
Sure, they have the flexibility in having really just a simplified, their policy covering this period of time when they're in the car at all times when the risk looks like personal use. You don't have to have, two policies there anymore. It's a very natural extension of what they're doing, and it really affirmatively covering what we already see regularly in terms of pizza drivers, attorneys driving in their car with clients, real estate agents. So this activity is very common in the marketplace already amongst businesses. What we're doing here is working with insurers to create affirmative coverage just for additional peace of mind. The coverage grant's already so broad that it covers all bodily injury or property damage unless expressly excluded.
So why wouldn't a driver have peace of mind if it were all on the TNC? Why wouldn't I just rest easy knowing the TNC would have to cover it whenever I have my app on?
Well, I think what we're trying to do here is to identify where the actual risk rests. And like I said here, during period one, it's hard to identify necessarily who a driver is associated with. They're not under an employment contract and they're not under a TNC's direction. It's not until they accept a ride that it's identifiable that, hey, I've now taken a ride through the Uber app to go pick up Joe who's requested this ride.
I see. And from an insurance standpoint, it makes more sense to assign the risk to where the discretion lies.
Correct, and there are endorsements out there in other states and places too that have addressed this issue in some similar context, and you're seeing this starting to come to fruition now for TNC. So I've seen endorsements that allow a traveling minister, for instance, to remove certain exclusions so he can have his personal property cover his services.
Okay. And do you see a downside from the driver's standpoint? There's been talk about putting the drivers at risk. That if we allow this flexibility, the driver could be somehow jeopardized.
No, it doesn't put them to. It actually doesn't create any additional risk whatsoever. And it puts them in an insurance marketplace that they're most comfortable with and accustomed to already, being either direct insurers or their local agent, if you will, from State Farm or Allstate or Farmers, take your pick.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Councilor Toa.
I guess I'd like to ask that same question of our staff. Do you see an increased risk for drivers with the insurance as it is?
Well, I mean, the main thing that we were concerned about is the personal lines insurance company being a completely different insurance company than TNC's insurance company. And the two are basically both trying to deny the coverage. And so the driver is stuck in the middle with two insurance companies arguing with each other about who is going to handle the claim. And the claim goes on for months, and the person who suffers the most are the claimants or somebody injured or the property damage that's ensued.
So it does sound like there is increased risk for the driver under the situation.
There's
as
certainly
it is.
increased complications.
And potentially for any passengers who might have been hurt. It could delay coverage, not just for a driver getting his or her car fixed, but also for another car that's involved, also for any passengers that are hurt. It might delay their coverage, their reimbursement, their ability to get care.
Yes.
Potentially. To me, I think that's a good reason to, with all due respect, if the insurance companies are working to create this hybrid product or this new product to meet this new demand, my guess is that level of innovation is going to go on, and we can always amend what is already an interim, intended as an interim ordinance. So I don't believe stifling innovation in the insurance industry should be our abiding concern here. I think limiting the risk, as per the suggestions we've heard from staff, is where we should go on that. So I'm proposing that as a friendly amendment.
Councilor Morales.
To be clear, since there was mention of risk for passengers, I just want to emphasize that we're talking about a period of time when there is no passenger in the vehicle. We're talking about a period when, before the driver accepts a ride. And what we've heard is that there is an ongoing discussion within the insurance industry about how to provide a product that is specifically directed at that situation. And that if we foreclose that conversation by just saying, no, we're not going to have any of that, we just want this to be covered by the TNC, then we actually could be shutting off some possibilities that could ultimately be helpful to the driver. The driver. And Mr. Scott, if I summarized that correctly?
You had, and I just wanted to address one other, I think, misconception again, is that there is no coverage gap. The policy that we maintain during this period one is specifically written to provide coverage should a personal lines policy not provide coverage. And as I stated last time when I was here, there are already very effective insurance rules in place that dictate how a coverage investigation amongst different policies is to occur and expeditiously reach a conclusion. Very, very common for multiple insurance policies to be involved in a single accident.
Okay. Well, for all those reasons, Mayor, no, the amendment is not friendly.
Not accepted.
Okay, I'll make that as a formal amendment then.
Amendment by Councilmember Tovo. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Spellman. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no.
No.
No. And that was Mayor Pro Tem, myself, and Councilmember Riley voting no, so it passes on a vote of 4-3.
Okay, I have a question for the maker of the amendments.